Hi, I'm Father David, and welcome back to A Simple Word, where every week we reflect on the Gospel for the coming Sunday. Especially in this time of Easter, what we're hearing are many accounts of the resurrection. This coming Sunday, we'll hear St. Luke speaking about the two disciples on the road to Emmaus. This is a beautiful gospel. I think it's one of the favorite of many when they speak about the resurrection, because these two disciples are walking along the road, and then Jesus comes and suddenly he's with them walking, and he asks them this question, so what are you talking about? And they're totally surprised because they say, don't you know? Are you the only one who doesn't know? And they speak about what happened to Jesus, that he had been crucified, and that on the third day they had gone to his tomb and his body was gone. The women were saying that he wasn't there, but they didn't know what had happened. And Jesus speaks to them and helps them to see that everything that happened in the life of Jesus, his suffering and his death, had been foretold in the scriptures. And he pretends that he's going to continue walking along, and they say, no, can you stay with us? So he agrees, and he stays with them, and when they're eating the meal, he takes the bread and breaks it, and in that moment, they realize it's Jesus, and he then disappears from them. And they go running back to tell the other disciples what had happened. So this is a story that's familiar to us. It's a beautiful story, but I invite you to see this account in the scriptures as something that also touches your life, because we are no different than these disciples on the road to Emmaus. First of all, they were in crisis. In fact, when Jesus spoke with them, they said, well, how is it that you couldn't know what's going on? So many terrible things are going on. They were in a crisis. And this is how the risen Lord comes to us. It's not just a beautiful Easter scene of a resurrection. It's coming to us in our crisis. And he comes to people who can't see him. It's one of the themes throughout the stories of the resurrection, that every time Jesus appears initially, they don't recognize him. And this is us. We're in a world in which there's so much crisis, and so many times we think that God is not present, and we look around for Christ and we don't recognize him. And what we're being invited to do is recognize that actually Christ is here. Christ is with us. And the way that Christ speaks to them is through the scriptures. He takes a word that is very powerful, and he explains how this word is true about what's going on in their life right now. And this is what Christ desires to do with us as well. In our crisis, he wants us to hear from the Word of God something that's not just about long ago, but something that touches our lives right now. What happened with the disciples when they heard this word is that their hearts were burning within them. And this is what is to happen in us. When we're in crisis and we listen to the Word of God, then this word burns in us. It changes something in us. It touches us at a different level. And then finally, in recognizing him in the breaking of the bread, this is what we too are invited to experience. It's interesting, in all of the accounts of the resurrection, Jesus is always with several people. He's not just with one person or another person. It's always in a community. And it's in this community in which he breaks the bread, and then they see him. The resurrection of Christ is not just something that we experience, one of us or maybe another of us, but we experience this also within the community. And when we celebrate the Eucharist, Christ himself is present with us and with the whole community. So what I invite you to do this week as you prepare for this coming Sunday is to think, what is my experience of the risen Christ? Again, so many times we think, well, it's something Christ rose a long time ago. That's something that happened a long time ago. But we're being invited to say, but how is this my experience today? How do I experience Christ alive? And then prepare to hear him this week, to hear him speak in the Word. We also have the other readings of the Scriptures. There'll be other times during the week, I hope, in which you listen to the Word of God. But then when you hear this gospel on Sunday, listen as Christ speaks to you and he touches your crisis and he helps you to see that his Word speaks to exactly what's going on in your life. And then you will see him in the Eucharist. You'll experience him in that moment. If you're in a crisis, it's much better. It's just so much better. So many times we think, well, it'd be better if I was past this crisis, if I didn't have this crisis, if I didn't have this illness, if this wasn't happening with my son or my daughter or my spouse. And yet, when we're in a crisis, we're so much more open to God speaking to us. And if you can't see him, don't worry, because when we can't see him, we're being invited to listen more, and then we will see Christ. If you're open, what's going to happen is after hearing these scriptures, you're going to want to run 10 miles to tell somebody else all about it, to let them know that you too have seen the risen Christ. This is what the world needs so much today, is for us to, in the midst of our crisis, to listen to Christ, to see him, and then to go run and let everybody know what we've seen. So if you've liked this presentation of A Simple Word, I invite you to let us know in your response that you like us, or email us. Thank you very much.